God did a wonderful job making us. It is beyond our current capabilities to understand all of the things He intended us to be able to do. But we were created to live in the Garden of Eden, and now we live in a degrading world where there is trauma, sometimes at extreme levels. And the enemy can use our capabilities as a battlefield. We have the capability to create whole worlds inside our own imaginations. Some of us can drift off for hours and have a really hard time snapping back into the realities around us and dealing with our real lives because we have escaped into a reality that we've made in our minds. Scientists call this daydreaming disorder or maladaptive daydreaming. Today, I want to share with you what I have learned about maladaptive daydreaming. The bulk of my experiences that I remember, I may have done this a lot in childhood and I just don't recall it, but the bulk of my experiences were when I was in a very unhealthy marriage. I created a whole sort of survivalist compound, a community. I built a lot of things. I even would research and find out how these things worked and had it all put together in my mind. And that did help me get through that difficult point in my life. However, at some point I had to come out. As of now, I very easily can drift off into places that are hard to come back from. Better realities. During difficult days, I can do this, but now I'm aware of it and I push it back away. Recently, I've been working on dealing with negative thoughts as I get bombarded. I didn't realize how badly I'd been hurt by some others, and when they would come into my thoughts, they would stay there. And I would imagine conversations. I knew this wasn't real. I felt almost as if I was working through issues. At some point, it became unhealthy. Obviously unhealthy. Through this secondary healing process that I'm going through, the Lord showed me how to imagine these people or situations are outside of me and to just push them away. It's working very, very well. One of the things that I can see that was happening, and I didn't realize it at the time, is I was avoiding healing. When I was staying inside this fantasy world in my mind, I could escape the realities. Well, some of the reality is that I needed to address what happened to me in childhood. I need to address changes that need to be made in me, and I wasn't doing that. I wasn't able to do that because I spent a lot of time in an alternate reality that I created to comfort myself. This is not healthy. At some point, it became very much used by the enemy. And even though I certainly don't do it at that level now, it does come in when I'm upset with people, when I am coping with people who have hurt me. When they're on my mind, the enemy seems to turn that. It becomes and can be demonic, and has happened demonically for me, to where you feel like you're fighting them all the time. I always knew these conversations weren't really happening. I knew that it was something that was playing out in my mind. I knew that they weren't there. However, it was having a great effect on my life, building frustration in my life, and I began to identify that the enemy was using this, a lot of which ended up becoming demonically generated. Every once in a while, the enemy will pop something in there and I have to just push it away. It's a newfound freedom. I'm able to focus. I'm able to concentrate. I don't feel stressed out over past experiences with people who are no longer around me, or conflicts that have been resolved. Those things do not stick around long term. In this, I've learned that my ability to maladaptive daydream, as I probably learned in early childhood during SRA, eventually was used by the enemy to keep me upset, to keep me distracted, to where I wasn't present. There are tons of scriptures about this, about protecting your mind, having custody of your own mind, how you basically, our minds are a battlefield. And we know this. We know about vain imagination. However, SRA survivors have it harder because we have learned at a young age how to disassociate in a way that allows us to create alternate realities in our head, and we know it's not real. The biggest dysfunction that this caused in my life, and something that I've realized in hindsight, is having this continual play out of situations, whether it was in a time where I needed something to help me disassociate from my current circumstances, or just the residual where I would play out certain scenarios in my head, both of which distracted me from the voice of God. Over and over again, I realized that there was times and situations where he was trying to work on me, but I was allowing myself to be so busy playing things through in my head, I wasn't hearing him. I wasn't hearing him. And I'm absolutely intent on not allowing that anymore. These types of daydreams do have a lot to do with why we feel so overwhelmed. It's more than that, but once we get rid of the practice of dissociating in this way, we begin to feel less overwhelmed. One solution that I've learned about is that a person can set a timer for 30 minutes or an hour, allow themselves to indulge in these fantasies, these extensive daydreams, but come out of it when you hear the alarm. This gives you the ability to grow into a situation where you can look at it on the outside of you and just push it away. I learned that daydreaming had caused me an enormous amount of pain. What was originally a source of dissociation that helped me through traumatic experiences later became a playing ground for the enemy. It delayed my healing in SRA, and it distracted me from hearing the voice of God. There were periods in time where he was working very hard to pull me to a place of healing, and I wasn't hearing him. I wasn't responding to him. I was busy dissociating. Yes, you can rebuke any demonic activity. You can call on the name of the Lord, and you can distance yourself from that aspect. However, getting rid of this habit is really hard because these daydreams are way better than what you're dealing with in real life. You're able to cope. You're able to distance yourself from any pain that goes on in those realities, and it is quite the release. Giving up on that, committing to giving up on that, is the first step to a new life